accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of Willet Pond Charitable and Protection Association, Incorporated, to control nuisance and non-native plant and algae growth utilizing treatment with US EPA MA state-registered aquatic herbicides, algicides, and other BMPs for Willet Pond. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. The public hearing on the above matter will be held in the Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, on February 28th, 2018, beginning at 7 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. There are no outstanding taxes due. Board of Health at its February 20th meeting voted unanimously that they have no concerns regarding the notice of intent to initiate aquatic management at Willet Pond. Please be advised that there are no planning comments at this time on the above referenced application from the planning board. From the town engineer. Reference has been made to a notice of intent for the above noted case, and this department has no comments to make on the application as presented. Board of Appeals. The board does not have any comments at this time on the above referenced matter. Representing the applicant.
How you guys doing? My name is James Lacasse. I'm here on behalf of Solitude Lake Management. I'm here today to talk about Willet Pond and Petit Pond, to help file an order of conditions for an aquatic management program that we want to carry out this year. Willet Pond and Petit Pond are about 215 acres. Willet Pond is about 206 acres, while Petit Pond is just north of, it's an interconnected body of water. It's just north of Willet Pond. It's about 9 acres. This body of water falls in 3 different towns: Westwood, Norwood, and Walpole. Walpole has the most acres out of them with 176 acres. Westwood has about 19 acres, and Norwood has about 20 acres. So altogether it's about 215 acres. There are 2 invasives in this pond that we're looking to take care of, as well as a native as acting as a nuisance as well. The 2 invasives are variable milfoil, which is located mainly on the western shoreline, the North Basin, as well as completely covering Petit Pond. And there's a new plant we have seen, a water chestnut. It's in the northeast cove. It's not at a nuisance level now, but it's one of, in my opinion, it's one of the worst invasives out there you can have in your pond. We handpicked about 7 individual plants during the survey this year. The main native plant that we're looking to control is bushy naiad, also known as southern naiad. It has taken over almost 100% of the shoreline. This plant forms dense mats on top of the surface, produces the seed that can travel around the pond. It's a hard seed, can remain in the sediment bed for a while. So we're looking to control this plant as well. And there's also a bunch of other natives taking up the open space where there is open space: clasping leaf, large leaf bladderwort, coontail, tape grass. Those aren't our main concerns. Our main concerns would be variable milfoil and water chestnut, as well as the southern naiad. The way we'd be looking to control this, one of the only ways out there, would be herbicides and algicides. We would be using US EPA and Massachusetts approved herbicides and algicides. They would be applied by a licensed applicator, a licensed biologist. The herbicides we're looking to get approved would be Sonar, Sonar 1, and Sonar Genesis. It's a liquid and a pellet form. The active ingredient is fluoridone. We'd also be looking at Reward, which is a contact herbicide. The active ingredient of that is diquat. And we'd also be looking at Indithol K, which is Aquathol K, essentially. In order to take care of the yellow and white lily pads, if that does become a nuisance problem, as well as the water chestnut, we'd be using AquaPro, which the main ingredient would be glyphosate. This year we are proposing to use a mixture between Sonar 1 and Sonar Genesis, which, like I said, is the pellet in liquid form. This proves extremely effective on variable milfoil as well as bushy naiad. We've had a project in the past. I'll bring up Lower Bolton Lake in Connecticut. It was 98% covered in bushy naiad. We used a very low dose of Sonar at it. Our results were almost 100%. We had a little bit of regrowth the next year, but that's just because those seeds can stay in the sediment bed for a long period of time. So you will get a little bit minimal regrowth. So we're looking to do implement a monitoring system for the next couple of years after we treat this year to monitor and see the progress of the pond. If you guys have any questions, then feel free to answer all of them.
Landis, sorry, did you have
Landis?
No, as you can tell, I forgot to even put anything in my report, but I don't have any specific questions. We have several ponds in town that get treated in similar ways, and I don't see anything specifically different here, except I think this is the first time that this
is the first time we had that.
It's a new program. So the only thing I would be curious is how you're going to, in our smaller ponds, it's easy to post prior to applying, but how you would handle that for such a large area.
There's about 85 residents here, and we are. It is a mandatory regulation that we do post on every single property that abuts the water. So what we would do is a poster would have to go up at every household, whether it's in the front of the household or whether they have backyard property. No matter what, we have to get access and post, and the posters have to stay up until the last restriction on the poster is ended.
I don't have any issues.
Roger?
Did you find any fan wort?
We did not find any fan wort.
But you found water chestnuts.
Yep, we found there was only 7 plants, and they were in the northeast cove, and the biologist that performed the survey was able to handpick those, which they might have to be handpicked next year. It's not at a point where we have to perform herbicide treatments or bring in a hydro rake or harvester. It's only 7 plants. We can pick it as long as we pick it before the seeds germinate and drop into the sediment bed. Then each year we should see the population decrease.
Okay, in your treatment process where you seem to have a particularly heavy growth,
Yep.
the pond, if I recall correctly, is heavily populated with motors,
Yes.
upward motors and other motors. Have you thought about using a moratorium on the use of motors for a period of time to reduce the chopping up of the plants?
That is a good point, and we do have several lakes that actually have moved to a complete lake of non-motors. But with what we're using this year, Sonar is incredibly effective on milfoil. So as long as the Sonar is able to get into the leaf matter and go into the roots, and that will kill the plant itself. And with Sonar, it's not a contact; it's a systemic herbicide. So you actually get control for about 2 to 5 years, if not longer than that. So if fragments do separate from a motor, and because that's how milfoil, that's one of the ways milfoil does spread is through fragmentation. If it does spread, this Sonar stays in the water column from anywhere from 30 to 45 days, and we usually perform a booster treatment. So what we have to do is 2 to 4 weeks after we apply the Sonar, we go back, we take water quality samples from several different spots, and we have to actually see if the concentration is still at a lethal level. And if it's below that level that we need in order to manage the plants, then we have to go in and perform a booster treatment. So this Sonar will actually be in the water column. So even if you do see fragmentation, the milfoil almost has 0% chance at living anywhere it spreads in the pond.
Now you're dropping the level of the pond 6 inches.
We actually aren't really able to drop the level of this pond because the dam is unable to be removed. So. But that's really negligible. Wow, negligible. So
You can't pull a board?
No.
the boards are in by iron casts. So unless we bring an excavator and remove it that way, then we're gonna have a tough time.
Well, that's too bad. And you can't add a board either.
No.
Well, that's too bad because that would help you in your retention.
We do recommend that we do lower the water before treatments. But with the pellets, it's actually, since we're doing it with liquid and pellets, the pellets are actually slow releasing, so they will fall to the bottom
Yeah.
and they will slow release from the bottom, so that will help maintain the level of concentration.
Using one type of pellet or using the 3 different sizes?
Yeah, it's just the one different pellet. What we do is we put a spreader either on the front of the boat, or depending on how many pounds we are putting in, it's either on the front of the boat or it's on the back of the boat. We put 2 on the back. It's kind of like that same thing you'd use on your lawn, you know, to put fertilizer down. It just spins it right out, and we just keep loading it up with the pellets.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yep.
I'm familiar with the whole system.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions, I think.
No questions from me.
Okay. Since I'm the one that replaced the boards in that dam the last time, I'm familiar with them. And the only way to change that is to smash the boards when the water's flowing over, or in the low flow time when there's no water flowing in, you can climb down in there and undo the bolts that hold the steel cap, and then you can remove the boards. So I know that there's no practical way that they can lower the water level at the dam. The only possibility is to use the low-level gatehouse and let more water out, but that would be a very slow process from the bottom.
It's not completely necessary, but
And
it
that's
does
not practical.
Yeah.
So I understand that that you can't lower the water level in that pond. Anybody from the audience have any questions or comments from the environmental point of view, not from traffic or any of those other issues?
After treatment, we use.
Name, please.
Can you just come up and speak, identifying yourself, please?
My name is Dan Menakis, I live on Bullet Street. After treatment, we can just safely swim in the water.
So there actually are no swimming restrictions, boating restrictions, fishing restrictions with what we are using. As a company, we do shut the lake down for the day just because to cover our own safety, and we don't want people swimming next to us while we're applying the herbicides. You could swim the very next day if you would like.
Would you drink a glass of it?
No, I wouldn't.
No?
Of the herbicide itself or of the water?
No, the water. After
Yeah,
treatment.
well, the sonar we actually use in drinking reservoirs around Massachusetts. We use it up to 20 parts per billion. In this lake, we're only going to be applying it at 5 parts per billion, so a quarter of what we use at a drinking reservoir. So it's a very, very safe herbicide.
Anybody else?
How many different herbicides were you using?
We're only going to be...
Just to identify.
Name, please.
Yep.
Joe McDonough, Bullet Street?
Just prior to speaking, if you could state your name and if you're a butter, for our records, please.
So on the permit, on this order of conditions, we are asking for the approval of a couple different herbicides. Sonar, which the active ingredient is fluoridone. Reward, active ingredient diquat. AquaPro, the active ingredient is glyphosate. Aquathol K, Endothol. I believe there was one more. No, that was about it. And these are very plant-specific herbicides, so they only target certain. So we're not using all 5 of them or all 4 of them this year. We're only looking to use Sonar this year with Reward if we need to. Sonar is more of a systemic herbicide, and Reward's more of a contact herbicide.
Bullet Street. How long do you think that it will take to clear up the pond?
With Sonar, like I said, it's a systemic herbicide. It does take a bit longer than a contact herbicide. With contact herbicides, you really only see a successful treatment for 1 season. That's it's a contact herbicide. Systemic usually takes a bit longer. You'll probably start to see the chlorotic color in the plant, which means it starts to turn like a white, light green. You'll probably see that within 2 to 4 weeks. And with Sonar, you're looking at more longevity of the pond. You're looking at more of 2 to 4 years of results. With contact herbicides, such as Reward, you would start to see results within a week to 2 weeks.
And when are you gonna do it?
So after this, after we get approval from all 3 towns this is in, then we move into the permitting process. So we have to go to the state and we have to say, listen, we want to use these different herbicides within the pond. The state usually comes back within 1 to 3 weeks, depending how busy the state is, with a permit with us. And then from that point on, we go ahead with the management plan. Typically with the vegetation that is in this pond, we would probably be looking to aim to treat, we'd probably conduct a pre-treatment survey in early May to late May to see, you know, if the vegetation is up, if it's emerged, to see what kind of state it's at, and depending on how the results from that survey comes back, then we would apply the treatment. Typically, we try to get it at a lower level, so when the plant's not fully grown, but if it's, you know, halfway up the water column, that way you have less plant decaying. We have to use less product, less cost for you guys. So that would probably be late May to early to mid-June.
Okay. I guess if nobody has any more questions, we'll accept a motion to close the hearing.
I'll move that.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So, as far as the conditions, we have a kind of a standard condition that we usually use for such projects, just that we would be notified before you do the treatment and get a copy of the notice that you give to abutters. So, other than that,
Okay, so,
Perfect.
vote the order.
thank you.
You guys.
Vote the order.
We have to vote,
You have
we
to
have
vote
to
the order. You close the hearing, now vote the order.
Okay, so accept the motion to accept the order.
I'll move that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Until they came to Norwood, they thought they were gonna take the boards out.
Yeah. Is the boards in Norwood?
The town line for Norwood and Walpole goes right through
Okay,
the,
yeah.
so half of the
right,
boards
right.
are in Norwood and
Yeah.
half in Walpole.
Most of the time I ever have
But
one.
I'm the one that replaced
Yeah.
them the last time.
Yeah.
And,
Is that what's under the highway, under the road?
well, it's right next to the road. And when they rebuilt the bridge, they didn't bother to
Right, they didn't.
update the,
Sure.
yeah, let's see.
Oh, I guess everyone left.
We,
Hold on.
Bye. Okay. No one's here for you, John?
Feel sad.
7:15, yeah, we're okay. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice hereby given of the intent of John Glosser to request an amendment to the order of conditions issued for 763 to 765 Main Street for the construction of a smaller addition to allow space for a parking area and stalls below the addition. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. The public hearing on the above matter will be held in the Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, on February 14th, 2018, beginning at 7 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. Hearing was held and continued to today.
Mr.
Representing the
Chairman,
applicant?
my name is John Glossa, Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. And one of my employees, Don Seberg, started this a couple of weeks ago, or presented this to you. I was on vacation, so as I emailed Landis, I'm never gonna do that again, because now I have to do all of this stuff that I missed while I was on vacation, plus all of this other stuff. But one thing I noticed in the file is Don did not give you the certified mailing receipts. So those are the receipts. So I would imagine he sort of went over it. You know where it is. It's the building on Main Street that's right across from Kendall Street, 763-765. As you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, was a factory at one time for the construction of trunks that would go on the backs of automobiles, and most recently it was Allied Auto Parts, and the building, or the portion of the building in the back, was used as a cabinet maker's shop, where he would make, you know, desks and drawers and whatever, that sort of stuff. So now this company, Cana Home, who specialize in kitchens and bathrooms, have bought it, and their original idea was to take down the building in the back and then rebuild it. And I think his architect actually had a better idea, and that is because the site itself lacks in parking. And it's a big building, even without the addition on the back. It's 2 stories, and then there's storage and all at the basement level, which you can access from the ground at the rear of the building, or actually on the side of the building, but towards the rear. So there's a lot of space there inside the building, and I guess the idea was that, you know, there wasn't much parking. I think we showed 9 parking spaces, and to tell you the truth, they're all not really in 100% compliance with what the zoning currently says, but because they were existing non-conforming, we just showed them on the plan the way they are, but they're all sort of a little bit smaller and maybe at a little bit different angles than you might like. So I'm just gonna flip then. So Landis had a lot of good points that she emailed to me prior to the last meeting, and then another one today. And so I'll just sort of go over that, and then maybe we can go from there. I know you have a very busy schedule for the next meeting. This doesn't go back to the planning board until April 4th, so it's sort of up to you guys how you want to handle this. But my opinion is I think it does meet the regulations, even the regulations, you know, the Riverfront regulations. So I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit here to So one of Landis's points, well taken, is that when they took down the building, we had shown blue here as the limit of work, as where the silt barrier line would be constructed, and the contractor actually built it where it's shown in yellow. And at least on the north side of the project, he altered into here. On this side, He really, even though the silt barrier's out here, he really didn't do any work in that location. We could bring the silt barrier back here, but over here, he's already sort of altered it. So I think that we probably need to leave it there. Don did a calculation for me, and if he had held to what we had shown on the plan, there would have been, you know, the whole area, not just the building, but this whole area. There would have been 10,253 square feet of alteration. So where he is now, and assuming that he's gonna do something in here, which he hasn't done, it would be 11,633. So it's about 1,400 square feet of area in here that, or between the blue and the yellow, that's, you know, either partially been altered or the way he has it now will be altered if we don't do something about that. And some of that is in the 25-foot no disturb, but I was looking back at our plans that you approved, and I drew them, so you can, you know, lay this on me, but actually some of this blue is in the 25-foot no disturb to begin with. We didn't really kind of look at that closely and keep it outside of the 25-foot. But you may know, right, this is the Neponset River, this is the edge of this river has Walpole's main trunk sewer, right, which is, you know, running down, following the Neponset River until it meets Norwood, till it meets actually the MWRA sewer at Norwood Town Line at Hollingsworth and Vos. So this area between the building, and actually between the building that was torn down and the river, has been altered twice. In the 1930s, the early 1930s, was the first sewer that was put in. And then in the early 1980s, I think 1983, was the current sewer, which I believe is either a 30 or 36-inch pipe. And when I wasn't there in 1930, but I was the town engineer here in 1983. When they put that sewer back, they put that back with, it's not a gravel path, but they put that back with a path, or they don't put topsoil on that, and they don't put plants on top of that, because especially your trunk sewer, you want to be able to come, if there's an emergency, you want to be able to get whatever machines you need to get down to the sewer as quickly as possible. So you don't want to be removing topsoil and things like that. And anyone who's been out there, you would see that there's actually a path that runs along the 1983 sewer, and then there's the old path that runs along where the 1930 sewer was. So it's not that was a nice vegetated area to begin with. I'm not giving the guy a pass. He should have had us stake the limit of work before he did the work, but he didn't. So he just put it down how he saw it on the plan. Actually, what happened is we showed it on the work side, on the building side of the path that's there, and he put it, for the most part, on the other side of the path. And so that's sort of the difference there. So I'm just going to go through Landis's email then and comment on the rest of this and show you the things we've done on the plan to address that. So that was number one, was the additional work and the work in the 25-foot no alteration area, and this should be addressed. So I'll get to that in a few minutes, how we're going to fix that back up. Okay, so the second one, unclear from the plan what was approved, and then we did submit a plan, but probably not quite in time to really let you see it. But sort of the blue color here is the outline of the building that was torn down, and then the tan color here is the additional alteration beyond what your order of conditions already allows in order to build this parking lot, which will be underneath the proposed building addition. So the building addition is here, but it'll be at the first floor level, which allows, and this parking is at essentially the basement level or even lower. It's 10 feet below the bottom of this building here. This allows cars to come in and park and then leave. So there's the difference, and it's 1,800 square feet. So that's number 3. What is the additional square footage of work in the riverfront area? It's 1,800 square feet. He did put down the total somewhere. I might have to find that.
John,
and then-
can you just to clarify, it's the originally approved plan, which I'm trying to open up, was just for the addition?
Yep, so.
It's just the
and
rectangle
just the blue.
area,
Yeah, the blue.
just the blue, not the,
Not, right, so there's 1,800 square feet here that would be in addition to the order of conditions that currently exists.
and that's in the footprint of the building that was taken down?
Yeah, the blue is the footprint of the building that was taken down.
And that's where the original addition was gonna be, that's
Yeah,
approved?
originally he was just gonna build that exactly where it's shown, but then his architect came along, I think,
Yeah.
and said, you know, gee, why don't you see if you can take advantage of it? And he doesn't really need all that space, so, for the building. We did stake the floodplain out in the fields. It's pretty close to what's shown on the plan here. We do show the floodplain. It's on the other side of the path. It's not on the work side, so it's outside of any limit of work. It's because the dam is there, it's just one elevation. It's not dropping as it goes along because of the remnants of the dam that's there. So I think number 6 and number 1 kind of go together. You know, we kind of had this sort of agreement that the applicant would work with Landis for the invasive species, and then to sort of fix up any areas on the down side of the slope or on the down side of the building, and get rid of the invasives and plant other plants. So I think I talked to the woman who flagged the wetlands for me, Karen Skinner-Catroni, and so says, you know, she's certified in this, identifying the invasive species, identifying how to get rid of them, and then she can also help me draw a plan. I mean, you know, she'll put her name on it if you want, for what the plants, how many, where they should
Everything's
go.
gone. Basically, everything's gone down to the wetlands.
Yeah,
All the vegetation is gone down to the wetlands, so
yeah.
nothing needs to be identified. There's a
Okay,
pile
but-
of cut brush that
Well, okay,
they completely
so I guess-
cut, and it's gone.
Yeah.
Down to the yellow erosion control line, there's nothing. So they don't have to worry about identifying anything. It's all been cut.
Okay, but would you like a plan that sort of I'll draw based on her recommendations for what to replant? How many, what size, what ground cover? I think that would be.
Yeah, under the original order, definitely.
Yeah, I think under the original order, it was sort of left that we were gonna work with you, but now I'll bring her in and she can draw up a plan for us. I mean, it'll be our plan, but she'll identify what needs to be done. And then we did add a detail of the wall to the plan. And then as far as your email today. I mean, the way I would understand the riverfront area and what the words alteration mean is, because it says if there's no topsoil there, if the topsoil's been removed, then that's alteration, and you can redevelop that. So that happens all the way down really to the edge of the river, because that's where, if you look at this, that's where the 1983 sewer was installed. The 1930 sewer, and if you want to look at these plans, the 1930 sewer was right behind this building. And you can see on this plan, the building, it was separated in 1930. So the storage building, the one that was taken down, did not actually touch the building that's there now. So I'll just show these to you. Where you can watch these. You can. So if you look at the sketch or the plan that's on the bottom of this sheet, you can see Main Street above, and you can see the shape of the building that's there now, which is this right here. Right? You can see the shape of that building, and then there's a space, and then back in the back it says storage building. Well, that's actually this building here, but this piece in the middle wasn't there, so it wasn't attached at the time. I scaled this up, so I know that that's the same building. So this building that's in the back, which I thought was built maybe in the 1950s or 1960s, actually was there in 1930. And then you can still see on here, we have it plotted on here, you can see the 1930 sewer. The easement's still there. It was supposed to be abandoned, but there seems to be consensus that the town never really did that. But it's not being used for anything, so it doesn't really create any problems. And then beyond that, below that, is the 1983 construction. So to build those sewers, they have to dig down whatever it was, 10, 12, 15 feet, put in a big pipe, cover it over, and like I said, I was there when they built this in '83, I think it was. We don't allow them, the engineers don't allow them to cover that with loam and seed once it's put in. The engineer wants access to those manholes and to those pipes. So my interpretation is that meets the definition in the Massachusetts wetland regulations in the riverfront area for an area that's been altered and an area that it comes under that. So we're only asking to go, another, 5 or 10 feet past the building. So we're not, sort of going anywhere near the complete limit of what was altered in 33 and then or in the 30s and then in 1983. So I think.
So you're saying there was no vegetation back there at all?
There was
no regrowth since the 1930s because there was nothing. But
yeah,
there was.
I hear what you're saying, but it doesn't.
There
It doesn't really say that in the regulation. It doesn't say, well, if it was altered and then naturally it became unaltered, it's not altered anymore. It just says altered areas that are void of topsoil. Well, clearly, in 1983, those paths are void of topsoil. That's why there's paths, and they were left that way on purpose. So I have it here if you want me to give it to you. I made copies.
I've read it.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
I've read it.
I'll just show you, there are pictures that the architect took. prior to any work here at all. So you can get a pretty good view of what it looked like. And I'll just approach her because I didn't make copies of this. But if you look at it, let's take my glasses off and so. Here's the back of the building. There's the back of that storage building. It sat on piers. The reason he took it down is underneath there were these huge timbers that were holding this up, but at least half of them had cracked and had dropped down to the ground. So you can see this is the area where we're going to extend. We're only extending out 5 or 10 feet. I mean, it's clearly an area in my mind that's been previously altered. And that's that area right there. So
Right.
I think it
This
needs.
is what it looks like now. I didn't print the pictures, but pretty much devoid of anything.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah.
But I mean, even before though, it didn't. There were, right behind the building, there was no vegetation. And I measured this building myself a bunch of times because we couldn't believe that it wasn't parallel with the other building, and it wasn't. But you know, there wasn't anything behind it. A lot of junk. So that's what, you know, those are sort of my responses to Landis's comments. And I'm just saying, I just think under the regulation that it can be done, that it's allowed, that the regulation allows us to redevelop up to and including all of the areas that were developed before. In my interpretation of their definition of the area that was altered, I think we meet that because it's an area where the topsoil has been, an area void of topsoil, I think it says. So clearly those paths are void of topsoil. And then, like I said, the other thing is, you know, we can provide a plan to, first of all, we'll tell him on the north side there, we're going to pull the silt barrier line back to where it was shown on the original plan, and then on the south side, where he's already altered. Right, we'll provide a planting plan for the whole thing, but over here we're going to include that area that he's already altered because, you know, what are we going to do? We have to fix it up now. So that would be, you know, my response to Landis's comments. The other thing is, and I don't know if you commented on it or not, but as far as the drainage, so what I did for the drainage is there are a couple of dry wells now here. One's strictly taking the roof drainage here, so we didn't want to sort of mix the two together and have the roof drainage going onto the ground and then into a dry well. And then we have the drainage from this parking. Now, by regulation, I really only need to sort of treat in that 1,800 square feet of extra, right? But what I did is this whole area here, including this rooftop, we sized dry wells that will take 2 inches of rain from all of that area without even calculating any exfiltration. But I also ran it, you know, pre and post. I mean, it's not even close. A lot of this site runs by. It doesn't go this way. So we have a catch basin here, a storm scepter, and 2 dry wells. One strictly to catch the rooftop, and then the other one to catch the rain from the catch basin and that's running through the storm scepter. then the dry wells are connected together, but at that point, it doesn't matter. So in that case, it's an improvement because you had nothing before. You simply had sheet flow going, you know, not only off of the roof, but off of some of the pavement that, you know, we're now catching. And we also have an infiltration trench that sort of runs a little bit onto the abutter's property in this location here. That's catching the water that's coming down that driveway between the two buildings. Right, this is Scoop's restaurant and Watson's Candies there. So I know you know, you can obviously do what you want, but I know you have a big agenda. I'm happy to come back, but you know, what I might suggest is that if you want to, you could vote in order, or the amendment to the order of conditions, and then we could just work it out, and then when Landis is satisfied, you could sign them at the next meeting rather than have me come back, but it's obviously strictly up to you.
Okay, Landis, anything?
Just as we've been sort of discussing tonight, there's two issues. There's work that was done under the order of conditions that was already issued that's gone beyond the approved plan, so that needs to be remedied with some plantings, because the order did state that that we would go out there and take a look at the vegetation that was out there and remove invasives and then figure out what needs to be planted. But it's everything's been taken down. There's nothing left. And then the other issue is the amendment. So the approval is they have an order of conditions to take down the existing building and to rebuild another building in the same footprint as what was taken down. This is to extend it beyond that footprint to put in walls. How high are the walls?
They're fairly high, actually. I think the highest corner is here, so the finished grade is 144, and we're on a 38, 36, a 34. So this one's about 9, and the highest point is right there where it's about 9 feet high. And then, you know, it's tapering down as it's going that way because the ground's essentially rising as we're going that way. So that would be the highest point.
So to build the walls for parking and for this addition, so there is additional work within the Riverfront area. So it's being applied for as a redevelopment, and I don't know. Yeah, so I think you should show that it isn't a redevelopment, and hear what you guys think as well. There was definitely vegetation out there. There might have not been loaned, but there was vegetation along the river, and I'm not sure if just a sewer line going in would constitute a full alteration of a riverfront area. It doesn't seem like it should, because there's still quite a bit of value of the riverfront area there, with the sewer line and the vegetation that was growing at that time. It provides shade, and it provides some habitat, and it provides some stability of the slope, and that's been taken away, and it's going to be replaced by big walls. So I'm not, you know, I don't fully agree that that was a degraded riverfront area before. So those are the two items that need to be discussed. And I think at first John was considering just continuing tonight, and I said, well, why don't you come and talk about the project anyways, because there's a couple of things that I think the commission has to kind of digest. I would not close the hearing tonight.
No, it doesn't sound like we can.
Because we don't have a plan, and there's a couple of things that need to be worked out.
So, the question is that, as you proposed in your first statement there, that whether they can do this or not, beyond, within, or not being closer to the river, the existing conditions are 100 feet, whichever is less. So
Right,
that's
right.
the question, right?
That's the question.
Right, so if I can, I'll just read it to you, okay? And you can make your own decision, obviously, but a previously developed riverfront area contains areas degraded prior to August 7th, 1996 by impervious surfaces from existing structures or pavement, absence of topsoil, junkyards, or abandoned dumping grounds. So what I'm saying is it's absence of topsoil. Just because there were plants growing doesn't say that. It says absence of topsoil. So when they put in the sewers, they took away the topsoil. That's my interpretation of the regulation. And I have copies of this if you'd like to see it.
And that area has to be replicated, the area that's been disturbed anyway. So they need to replicate that. Disturbed
Right,
area.
under the approved plan, the part of the area that where the proposed parking and walls are gonna be, was gonna be replanted, but
Right.
that's
Right.
not gonna be, as part of the improvement to the riverfront area. There was going to be invasive species removed and plantings in that area.
Right, right.
Now, there won't be, because they're proposing now to do additional work.
Right.
Right, but, you know, I don't think that takes away our ability to do what the regulation says. I hear what you're saying. It's taking away 1,800 square feet of area that before we agreed would be planted. So what we're saying is, though, we didn't extend that project to the full allowance under the regulation, because at that time, that's all he wanted to do was tear down the building and build a new building. But now, you know, it seems that it's a much better idea in the sense that it'll make the building much more usable than before, when they only had 7 parking spaces. You know, for a fairly, I'm sure you've seen the building, it's fairly large for a fairly large building. So, again, not to beat this to death, but we did not propose before to extend, you know, to what I would consider our full allowance under the regulation, which I would say is the edge of the 1983 sewer easement, because that's all been altered by the 1930 construction. So it doesn't say, you know, that there was invasive species or any species. It just says absence of topsoil, and there was clearly absence of topsoil. And you can see it on those plans that there wasn't really a lot growing in that location, just a lot of stuff
Okay.
that would grow anywhere. But to sort of provide additional mitigation, like I said, we'll hire a professional to provide plantings, you know, plantings which will be, you know, good for the environment in this location, and some sort of stabilization with some ground cover. And the other thing is, as an ongoing condition, you know, now this guy owns it, right? I mean, you can put that in as an ongoing condition, that he's going to maintain this, that, you know, whatever, you can have inspections once a year or every other year or whatever, and you know, kind of make something, you know, good out of something that wasn't so good before.
Hey, Roger?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts here. One is the water runoff from the Main Street, or around that quite a steep hill going down to the pond. And I'm just wondering about that, and whether or not the calculations took in that extra water, surface water, that would be there. That's one thought. The other thought is, you know, parking cars down there, we're gonna have a barrier so we don't end up with the car backing up and ending up in the pond.
There's a guardrail and a fence.
Okay,
So another thing that you guys we should put on the fence is no snow dumping, because we don't want the.
do you know when the dam washed out?
Well, I thought it was, I thought they actually breached it on purpose, didn't they, in the 1970s?
No.
No,
Stone.
1955,
It broke, it
in the flooding, yeah.
Carol or Diane?
But the interesting thing is, we still have some of the earthen dam on either side of the actual control structure.
Right. That's why I say the floodplain, if you look at the floodplain map, even though it's a river, right, which, you know, normally you'd have a sort of a sloping or a floodplain line that's on grade and keeps changing. In this location behind the Stetson Dam, it's just one elevation. I think it's on the plan. Well, it's one elevation 131, so it doesn't change. It's 131 in the area of the Stetson Pond. It would change on the downstream side and then somewhere on the upstream side, probably when you get up behind CVS up in that area.
Now, do we know what the elevation of the pond was back in 1950s or 1940s?
I don't. I could try to find out for you if it's important.
Maybe an old prop map might show it. I haven't looked it up, but what is the elevation today? So
I don't know. The elevation of the 100-year flood is 131. So
yeah, but what's the elevation normally?
of the top of the dam there?
Yeah.
I don't think we were. That's pretty far out, way out over here somewhere. So I don't think we really went out there and did any topo or any elevations.
Well, one
We
thing
simply topoed this portion of the lot between Main Street and.
One thing as I'm concerned about is the whole pond is not much of a pond. It's mostly silted and it's got all kinds of vegetation in it. I haven't been out there, but I can see it from the shoreline and from aerial photos. But certainly we have on peak flows in the Neponset could be very high. And it wouldn't take a great deal of restrictions to plug up between the two sides of the original control structure and create a lot of backwater that would come back on us and basically create flooding because there's no way of basically controlling it or controlling the level or to really get in there to maintain it. So I look at the opening as a plus and a minus.
That could be the only thing I can tell you.
I think it's an accident ready to help in the floodplain maps 100 years, you know, may be of little consequence based on a heavy flooding condition.
I don't know. The only thing I can tell you is, you know, FEMA, right, the federal government tells me that the elevation of the flood in this area is 131.
Federal government doesn't live here.
And that's an old map anyway.
I don't think that, you know, generally they're using subcontractors, and my guess is it was a subcontractor who's familiar with Massachusetts and probably Walpole who determined the elevations.
Well, you gotta remember there's two other flows going in the Neponset River at that point. There's Minebrook and Springbrook.
Yeah.
So.
But, so as I said though, where we're working is, you know, a lot higher than, you know, than the floodplain. It's at least 3 feet higher than what's shown on here. And then what we're actually building is gonna be, you know, 13 feet higher than the floodplain shown on here. So I don't think we're, you know, creating any nuisance or any problems by building this as far as the floodplain goes.
Okay, Betsy?
Yeah, okay, so I guess I'm seeing two different versions of why we're here. I think the main thing that's concerning is that even though you might think that you were within your rights to have maybe asked to begin with to have an extension into an area that had those particular pre-existing conditions, I think it surprised everyone that you'd go ahead and do it, or that, you know, the person who worked on it would, because that's not usually done. I mean, maybe if you had come before us to begin with, we would say, okay, yeah, you gotta put a parking lot there, and, you know, because I remember.
They didn't do that consciously, though, Betsy. He just did it because he, you know, didn't hire us or didn't ask us to stake out the limit of work. And
So that's my second problem then. When you say then, okay, we should be reassured that we can put whatever we want into the ongoing conditions, like please no snow removal out the back, please do this, please do that, and the ongoing. It's hard for us, I think, to trust that. Because, you know, you'll be gone and it will be whatever they want to do. If already at the very beginning of the process, getting a nice stack of paper from us about how it was going to be done and ignored it, it suggests that could be a pattern going forward. So I think that's level one of the concern. I mean, it just makes Landis's job so much harder. We sit here, you know, of a night, building up this, you know, order of conditions, and then, we didn't do it. And it's just hard, I think, to
I agree with
keep
that.
track of the things that are going right, let alone the things that are going wrong.
I agree with that 100%. So I think one of your conditions should be, prior to any more work, the engineer shall stake the limit of work, and it shall be, you know, viewed by the conservation agent and go forward.
Well, I
from
wonder
there.
if that will get read. I guess we'll find out. And then the second level.
Well, if it doesn't get read and it happens again, you just simply stop them and say, that's it. You know, you're not going to do any more work. So.
Oh, but
sort
that's
of-
just so stressful for us to even think about. I just mean, to sit here at 8-something in the evening, you know, going over something that we went over before. And then the second thing is, okay, I'm trying to see a silver lining here. You're gonna have vastly improved drainage, and actually, if you can think of any way to even vastly more improve it, that would be great. You're gonna have a professional vegetation person come and do a vegetation plan. Tell her, tell her that it should be a wonderful vegetation plan, not just sort of a halfway one that you do in an area that was kind of not so great to begin with. So that's the silver lining. It's quite possible we would have permitted the additional 6 or 7 feet. It's just now, this sort of, I feel a sort of level of distrust about the thing, just going forward.
I can't blame you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I was surprised as anybody when I learned that, you know, that the limit of work had been, you know,
Yeah.
extended beyond what the commission had agreed to. So I think going forward, we just need to put some clamps on the applicant and some controls on him.
Okay.
And to say that, you know, the engineer, you know, let me take over the project. Let me just put all those conditions in there that, you know, the engineer has to write a report every week to the agent as far as what's going on at the site. I don't mind doing that stuff. And if he complains about the cost of it, it's very simple. He shouldn't have done this to begin with. So we don't have to worry about being the bad guys. We just have to worry about getting what we want to get. And I think there is a way to do it. And it's to kind of clamp down on them, to let them know that this is not acceptable and that maybe it's reluctantly on your part, going to approve your amendment, but it's going to come with a price to you. That's the way I would sort of term it to him. And if you want me to tell him that, I'll tell him that. He's probably going to watch this and know that I told you that. But that's what probably needs to be done. So I don't have any problem with that. I think you're well within your rights to be upset with this guy. I was upset when I learned about it. It shouldn't happen. You know, there's a limit of work, and it's put on there for a reason, so that's the limit of work. It's, you know, doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
I'd love to hear your comments on the Riverfront area. If it's I don't think we have sufficient information that this was a degraded riverfront area lacking topsoil or vegetation. And I was just reading one of DEP's decision in 2013, and this is a gray area. This is not a You're saying there was no topsoil there, but we don't know that. No one looked at it, no one took samples of it. It's not, so I think that's where the real issue is the area you want. The commission approved a building to be built within the existing foundation of the building that was taken down. Now they're coming back and they're asking to do beyond that. And is that or is that not allowable under the regulations under redevelopment? It's closer to the river, and there's not 100 feet between the activity and the river. So Al,
Okay.
you know the River Protection Act
Okay,
quite
now,
well, so.
There's something else that comes into play there, that, first of all, I want to know how far from the edge of the water and the normal time of flow is this parking area going to be? And what's the surface of the parking area? We haven't heard any discussion over whether it's paved or gravel or what. And the second thing I want to know is this really a riverfront, or is it the banks of a pond? Because I distinctly remember when I was young that there was a pond. Okay, now, has the pond completely disappeared and it's just a riverfront now? And if it's a riverfront now, the key phrase in the redevelopment of a riverfront area is, for me, that you have to show improvement to the environment in the area, okay? You can't develop more than was developed. You can develop less, but the end result is you have to show improvement. Now, I won't debate whether you can have plants in soil that's not topsoil. Certainly in that area, and I've ridden in a town truck the whole length of that sewer line looking for a leak. Because one time when I was the acting agent here, there was silt in the river going under Main Street. And I came to Public Works, and I got somebody from Public Works, a town engineer at the time, and we took a town truck and drove the length of the river, and we didn't find anything wrong with the sewer line. So I understand the sewer line's there, but now when this parking area is built, will it still be possible to drive a pickup truck size vehicle along on the sewer line, as is the normal way of inspecting? So those are things that I'm concerned about, and I believe that we can plant right up to the edge of the water, whether or not there's topsoil there, and there'll be plenty of nutrients in the subsoil, and there'll be plenty of water, and a lot of things will grow very lushly along there, regardless of whether there's topsoil or not. So I'm not going to get into the debate about whether there's topsoil. Lots of riverbanks don't have any topsoil because it's been eroded away, and the more substantial soils remain. So that's the question. If we're going past the developed area and it's a pond, then it's one thing. If it's
not a pond.
No
It's a
pond
river.
there, and it's just river, then the riverfront rules and regulations come into play, and I want to make sure that I see improvement to the environment along the edge of the river. So I haven't seen that if we need a planting plan, some mention of how we're going to stabilize the bank of the river, I want to see that. We haven't seen that at this point, especially since some of it's not stable at this point because of work that was done outside the work area. So I think there's some concerns here that have to be dealt with, and as John says, this is not going to happen right this minute.
So to answer a few of your questions, first of all, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm pretty sure it's a river. I don't think it's a pond because the dam's gone and it's flowing water, so I don't think it really has any pond characteristics left to it. You know, it's just, it's very small.
The full extent of the Neponset River is a river.
Yeah, I don't know.
Stated
yeah.
in the regulations.
So that's that. I mean, I think you should treat it as a river. I don't think.
No, it is a river.
We treated the original one
It's
as
a
a river.
river.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a river.
So the
Full
second
extent
part
of
of
the
your
Neponset is a
question.
river. It's a river. All the
North end of the site is water's edge, and then on the north side is 40 feet, and on the south side 30 feet. So the water's edge from this wall. And the path is over the sewer line, which is only like 10 feet away from the, you can see the easement here. So we're not, we can't put this wall in the easement, so we're not in the town easement, so we're not on the path. We're not blocking anything. You would still be able to drive that vehicle back and forth along that path, as long as you can get onto it somewhere. So we're not blocking that. So,
Can you just clarify that? So you're not in the easement, you're not on the
no,
path?
we're not in the town
But you're in
easement.
the area that was disturbed to put the sewer in?
Yeah, because the 1930 sewer is farther away. It's farther from the river than the 1983 sewer, which is right along the river in this location. So when they built the 1983 sewer, they took a new easement, and it actually goes farther down and behind what used to be, what's the car wash now.
Yeah.
Comes out on the other side of that, where the 1933 one went on this side of it, on the south side of the car wash. That pipe is still there, by the way, and those manholes are still there, but it's not used. Part of it is used as a drain line for the catch basins that are under the Elm Street Bridge.
Okay.
It doesn't work too good because when they didn't really do it right, but that's another story for another day. But
Okay, so,
part of that pipe is still used.
so I think first thing you need to do, John, is you need to show an enlarged view of the area behind the building that's there now, showing the details of the parking and the easements and where it's soil, where the edge of the river is, and how that area that's then going to remain after the parking lot, if that was permitted, how that's going to be stabilized and vegetated so that it doesn't wash away the next time we have a serious rain. And in the meantime, that area that has been disturbed ought to have some erosion control mats applied to it so that, and that should be as quick as possible because we're getting into a season where we can have.
I think I've been out there a couple times, Al. It's stable as it is now. It's not washing silt really down into the river.
If we get 3 inches of rain this weekend?
Well, it's been like that through the past couple of pretty much downpour rains.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I
it's
can
got
take a look at it again tomorrow.
It's got a really heavy silt sock,
Yeah,
a
I think-
big one,
Yeah,
which is at the
okay.
bottom. yeah, obviously if it needs additional erosion control, then that should be put there.
Okay, so
So,
I think John has his homework established, and I think we'll have to continue this, whether we like it or not.
so you want him to revise the plans, but not make any kind of decision on the redevelopment?
Right.
Well, I think that's the first step, is for us to see what's going on there, and then if we want to, I'm willing to accept that it's redevelopment, because that area has been disturbed several times over the last 150 years. It's not brand-new virgin soil, and it's not brand-new virgin
That's the answer to that
vegetation or anything.
Is that the question? We've kind of established that then? We're gonna allow that? Is that?
And the goal of redevelopment in this area, they have to show improvement over what was there when he started disturbing things.
I just thought the applicant would probably appreciate that, rather than doing a whole bunch of revised plans and come back and the commission say, sorry, no.
I appreciate that, Leon.
No,
So
that's
that's
what-
why I
that's-
thought
yeah, no, I
that
know.
issue itself,
Yeah,
Let's find out
Should
what's
be-
there exactly, and then we can go from there.
I don't disagree with that.
Well, we can do a few hand borings and see what the soils look like in the area that hasn't been sort of smashed up already, and just take a look and report back to you on what that is. But, you know, not to beat it, but you can even see where the path was for the 1930 sewer. It's still out there. In fact, you see it on the aerial photography. But I'll take some corings and we can look and see what's underneath there, and if there is loam underneath there, if it's just all, I think it's just all sort of a till backfill, I'll blow the plan up, and I know what you're saying. These plans, what happens is, there's so much stuff that we are required to put on the plans that they become unreadable. They're easy for us, because we're drawing them, if you know what I'm saying, but I certainly understand. So we'll blow them up, we'll try to make them a little bit more readable, so just sort of some of the important stuff will be, like, we'll try to break them out a little bit easier. And then I'll do the planting plan with Karen, and then I can add another dry well there, and then it'd probably be like 3 inches of rain, but at some point it sort of becomes,
oh, yeah. The improvement for the area between the wall and the river at this point is,
yeah, but I think there, other than the path that Al was talking about, you probably just want plantings, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what
Here. yeah.
Yeah, no
We'll do a real good-
You're
trees.
now putting more development in an area where you had proposed to do planting, so.
So we'll
you-
put more
You gotta do
plantings
something a
in-
little better.
more
Yeah,
plantings in the
And
area
that's
that's.
what we're
That's-
saying, you gotta do a little
that's
better.
left
Before
over.
we approved the plan where you're gonna, you went up with the building, you were gonna do a bunch of nice plantings, and now you wanna do more in that area, so
I
what
understand.
more are you gonna give back? What's
Yeah.
the
okay,
additional
I understand. Maybe we
enhancement
can,
to the river?
He owns plenty of lands, out here, maybe there's other areas out
Oh,
here.
yeah,
that we can look
if
at.
he owns land
let's
out
see it.
there,
Oh, he owns all the way out and across the dam.
okay, improve all
So-
that.
We'll take a look at that. Sort of the point of no return, is that what it is? Sometimes you gotta make too much of a mess to fix something, and maybe it's just better to leave it alone, but if we can find some places that make sense, we'll show that too, we'll do that too.
Okay.
Okay.
There's plenty of poison ivy out there.
Hey,
So don't plant any of that.
No.
That I know, but we came back.
Good to know.
I hope you show how you're gonna handle the snow as well as the dumpsters in this thing. I didn't see it on the plan.
So this is
It's a bad place.
This is
to
a
get in and out of.
kitchen and bath. It's only a showroom. They're not building anything here. It's a showroom. So his waste it's kind of like my office. It's nothing but paper. So he just wants to, he's got a basement door here. He just wants to have barrels, and then they're gonna take care of that themselves. So he doesn't wanna have a dumpster. We find that a lot of the developments now, they don't want dumpsters, because dumpsters, A, become places for people to get rid of their stuff, people who are just driving by and have a couch or a chair they wanna get rid of. And B, you know, when
Sure
you're
does
throwing
happen.
food and stuff in them, they become something that you don't really want. You know, they attract animals and all. So he doesn't want that. He just wants to have the trash handled.
I don't think anyone's gonna turn into there unless they have to go there, because when I went to do inspections there, I felt like I was taking my life into my own hands, because it's such a bad place to stop and take a turn, especially a left-hand turn, which is what the mistake I made. I'll never do that again. So I don't know how many people are planning to turn there, but I wouldn't take that left turn.
The intersection area is rough.
It's really bad.
Yeah, it's not bad if you come out and take a right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
best to take a
I-
right.
Drive in
You
and
have
take a
to
right.
take a
I
right.
take a right and go completely
You
around
have
the
to
neighborhood.
go all the way around, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
call
what
it
you
the
have to do.
Walpole left turn.
Yeah.
Because if you stop at that blinking light, the people behind you.
Okay, so,
Move to continue.
Let's continue.
motion to continue,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I guess the question is, how long is it going to take you, John, to get this straightened out?
I'm sure we can have it back to you next week. We go back, I think, to the planning board the 4th or the 5th. No, I'm sure we can, it's not, right?
Sorry.
It's not a lot to do,
We still
Peter,
have
is
more
it?
business.
But you got our agenda for the 14th
Oh, I know
is
that.
very full. Our
And
agenda
when's
for
the-
the
what's your-
28th is
The 28th of March?
March,
That's fine, that's fine.
is also getting full, but it might be a late evening. We have,
That's all right.
um,
Well, if that's more palatable to you, that's fine, because that's before the, I have to wait until I think it's the 4th or the 5th for the
what the time.
planning board anyway.
7 o'clock
No, but we have something scheduled already.
on the 28th? Right,
Yeah.
or 7 o'clock.
So this one would be at, so we currently have the new, proposal for the Walpole Woodworkers site. That is our first hearing on the 28th.
So there'll be a lot of abutters. I'll have a lot of people to talk to while I'm waiting.
Yeah, and I have to recuse myself.
Oh, will Jack be back?
No.
What? Jack
No,
won't be back?
he'll be back the last meeting in March.
Oh, I thought it was, he's gone until then.
No, I think he said he was gonna be back the last meeting in March.
Okay,
We'll have to double check that.
yeah.
Okay, so,
It's up to you. I can do the 14th. We can get this back into you, let's say by Wednesday. Is that
I
reasonable?
don't,
He says no.
the 14th, we have room on the 14th.
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay, so
But I
the
mean-
28th.
The 28th's fine.
Okay.
So then, what time?
What
Well,
time
what-
is Walpole Woodworker?
Well, we put
7?
you on at 7:30, but it's potentially
Yeah,
gonna be later.
I understand.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be 10.
And then we may also have another one that night too, so.
Okay.
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 But that
Two
would
of us
go
need a
after,
stretch.
that would go after me.
Roger, do you wanna stand up and stretch your legs a little bit?
Does your watch tell you that?
Oh, yeah, yeah, this is like an hour, this is like an hour and a half of sitting, and
Yeah.
I've decided this
Okay.
is not good for us.
Okay.
It's not good for Roger, it's not good for you.
No, it's not good.
No.
Stretching.
This is a break, Roger's stretching.
Go to commercial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
See?
Yeah, see?
Yep. People's doctors would be pleased with them.
Yeah.
We should get standing desks.
Yeah. I mean, I've been sitting for a solid 2 hours, that's, what do we have, like minutes or something?
That's the end of our hearings.
Yeah, so you can do that standing up if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea.
So,
That's crazy.
Sorry for them.
Has anybody read the minutes? I didn't because I got them today.
All right, we can table
Thanks for
that.
bringing them,
You're welcome.
Linus. Somebody move it?
I'll move it, sure.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do you have anything to add on the enforcement orders?
Not really, other than what I wrote in my report. I'm still trying to work on, board in the states and getting that
Erosion, okay.
ongoing.
Let's see. Board comments.
Right, so the board comments, planning board 255 Union Street, which we issued an order of conditions for already for that project last week. Then Nickel Ponds Lane, and that's on our, continued on our,
For next week. I mean,
for the 14th,
next hearing.
right. And then the next one is Polt Homes, that's the Walpole Woodworkers site, and
yeah.
that's on the 28th. And then the ZBA, there's 1900 Main Street, and they need to address stormwater on that site. They're supposed to file with us as well for the septic tank that's being put in also.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, John. And, let's see, we have, this weekend on Saturday is the conference, at Holy Cross.
Mm-hmm. I can't go to it, but yeah.
Anybody got anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Somebody make a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.